Tim and I met in an English literature class our junior year of college, and we've been together the 10 years since. While he ended up going into IT, I stayed in the liberal arts track and ended up doing non-profit work after college when I realized I didn't actually want to be a school teacher. Just to say that we always assumed he'd out-earn me by a considerable margin. Though when he made more, I always insisted we split things evenly to avoid potential resentment down the road. I've had sort of a non-linear career path, but ended up switching to the corporate world. To make a long story short, my liberal arts degree and time doing non-profit work gave me a lot of skills that enable me to really excel professionally in some more niche areas. I recently started a new job as a consultant, making way more than I'd ever anticipated. When I got the offer, I told Tim that the pay was amazing, but he didn't ask about the actual amount, and I didn't want to be braggy about it, especially since I was fairly sure it was above his current income. Well, we just put in an application for a new place, and in the process of having to submit our pay stubs, it's become obvious that I make roughly 30% more than he does now. I expected him to think that was cool, since he's a feminist and has always been super supportive of my career. But instead he started to make increasingly harsh jabs about how I cheated the system to get where I am. That no English Lit major makes more than a cybersecurity professional without cheating somehow. His major point is that I got my first job out of nepotism, which set me up to trample more qualified people who didn't have the same advantages. It's true that I got my first post-college job after being referred by a sorority sister, but it was for non-profit work making $22K /year, not exactly at somebody's daddy's firm. He also points out that at my first corporate job, I snagged a big promotion after volunteering to take on starting up the company's diversity /equity / inclusion program, and I'll admit that were I a white man, it's highly unlikely I would have been able to be the face of the eventually high-profile diversity program. Tim also notes that I was awarded a small college scholarship for being a promising female writer, when no such scholarship existed for males. But all that said, I still don't feel like I cheated the system, and it makes me angry to listen to him joke about it. Especially since I grew up blue-collar and worked full-time while going to school full-time to afford my degree. I reached a breaking point yesterday when he made a crack about how the new / first woman on his team is an obvious diversity hire. I told him that his jokes about women cheating the system to get ahead aren't funny or guy talk ribbing, as he says. They make him sound like an insecure little boy. He told me I was being a naive Karen, and we haven't really talked since yesterday. University is starting back soon, so many of my friends started moving back to town. I am 17 female, live in a house with 5 friends. I wasn't born in the UK but moved here with my parents when I was 17. We come from another European country, so I speak my native language, English, which is far from perfect. I've been learning Spanish and English since I was little, and my Spanish is better than my English. I don't have an obvious accent in English, people just assume that I am Canadian. We had a small party on Saturday and one friend brought his new girlfriend, Jess. Jess 20, and she's the reason why I am posting here. Jess made sure to let everyone know that she's a polyglot and speaks multiple languages. I was obviously impressed. I study modern languages, meaning that I'm learning Italian and German on top of Spanish. And obviously I asked what languages she speaks: Spanish, Japanese, Arabic, my native language, German, Korean, and French. I told her how impressed I was and carried on with my evening. I had a short phone call with my mom, whom I obviously speak to in my native tongue, and I went out of the house to talk to her. Jess was out in the garden and heard my conversation, and she corrected me on my pronunciation. I told her that she was in the wrong, and she insisted that she knows better. I didn't fancy getting into any arguments, so I ignored her and went back inside saying whatever. Later, I bumped my head and swore loudly in Spanish. I tend to code switch a lot when drunk, and she corrected my pronunciation, which was funny because it was her who was incorrect. I ignored her again. A while later I wanted my friend, who is from Spain, to hand me something, but I forgot how it's called in English. So I said, "Hand me Spanish word, please," knowing my friend would understand. Jess decided to correct me again, using completely incorrect word. My friend and I looked at each other, and me being drunk, I lost any self-control I had. I spoke to Jess in Spanish asking her what the hell she thinks she's doing. And she looked at me telling me that my Spanish was so wrong that she didn't understand a word. It wasn't but okay. So I told her the same thing in my native tongue. To which she replied with the same thing. I laughed at her and told her it's my native language and she really shouldn't lie about being a polyglot and correcting people when she doesn't actually speak those languages. She was fuming. She tried to grab her boyfriend's hand and leave with him, but he was too drunk to care and just said, "Told you to stop lying." I don't know how she got my number, but she called me this morning screaming what an asshole I am to humiliate her like that, and if she knew I spoke the language, she wouldn't have corrected me. I do feel bad now. I realize how humiliating this must have been for her, but on the other hand, she shouldn't have been lying. I am part-timing in an IT company that is very close-knit. My boss Steven and his wife were always sweet. It was my first month and it was my boss's birthday week. So he and wife Melissa were kind enough to include me in this fancy dinner they were taking everyone to. A week prior to the dinner, Melissa added everyone to a group chat and asked whether we had any suggestions on where to eat. I told her that I am fine with anything as long there are vegetarian options available or at least chicken. They brought their daughter Steph to the dinner and she is a sweet little girl. Now Steph was really interested in me and she kept on asking me questions about how I look the way I look. Now I am short, 5 feet, but can be somewhat deemed as fit to today's generation. I was transparent with her and told her that I don't restrict myself to certain foods but rather eat everything in moderation. Plus I have a plant-based diet and home-cooked meals so that helps, and I also lift weights. Now Melissa overheard our conversation partially. She pulled me aside and told me that Steph was recovering from eating disorder, so she encouraged me to be honest with her and not lie to her and not to order anything that screams diet. When I saw the menu, there were little to no vegetarian options available. It didn't have anything for me. I was very disappointed and made a comment that, "Oh wow, there are no vegetarian options." Melissa chimed in and said that eating meat once in a while won't affect my weight. Now, when I say plant-based diet, it's not that I don't eat meat, but I only eat chicken maybe once a week as a side dish, and certain types of fish occasionally, but other than that I mostly eat vegetarian dishes. My food habits are not for my weight, but for my religion/culture. It has nothing to do with my weight. When the waiter came in, I was still glued to my menu when all the others had already ordered. Melissa said that, "Oh, she will have the duck too," and I interrupted and said that no, I will have the garden salad. I hate salads, but there were no other veg options. Melissa got quiet. After a few minutes she told me that I shouldn't have lied and lead on her daughter if I was going to order a skinny salad and starve myself. She said that I am just like those IG influencers who lie to impressionable young girls about their food habits and bodies, and I just proved that by ordering a salad after giving her daughter a "don't restrict yourself" speech, and I probably triggered her eating disorder. I tried to explain that I only ordered a salad because there was no other option in the menu for me, but then she said that I should have just sucked up and eaten the duck as it isn't going to affect my weight, but then again, I corrected that it is a religious thing and not a diet thing. She said that if I eat chicken then obviously I would eat other animals too, and I was just putting up an act. It was horrible. She completely tore me down and I immediately left. My twin sister, May, and I are identical. At the end of our first year of college, I was in a car accident, and I ended up with a facial scar and major trauma. I started seeing a therapist because of the nightmares and the fact that I was panicking any time I got into a car. That led to me realizing there were some deeper issues, which we worked on. As part of that work, I got a physical. Started working with a dietitian to fix my diet and the smorgasbord of vitamin deficiencies it caused. I started working out, strength training 3 days and sprints or hit on 3 with our older sis. By the end of our first year of college, we had each gained about 30 pounds. By the end of the next year, I had lost half of it, but I was smaller at 134 pounds than my previous 120 because of the muscle mass. And that's been my size for the past half-decade. I found a new beautician, and she gave me long layers to make my natural curls be curls instead of waves of frizz. I always wanted, but that my old one said would look bad and refused. I stopped bleaching it and let it go its natural dark blonde / light brown. I stopped spray tanning. Again, that's been my look for the past 5 years. I live in a rural area, and the internet isn't great. Things like FaceTime just aren't options, and I can't post a lot of pics on social media //see of it. This is relevant because a big issue is that May didn't see me over the quarantine. We talked on the phone a couple times a week, but it mostly revolved around her wedding planning. She got engaged before the Rona put us on lockdown. I wasn't her mo, so mostly I was being told decisions, not involved in the process. When it came to the bridesmaids' dresses, May sent our sister, SIL, and me a link and told us to get it in our size. Same with hair and makeup, but we had to arrange for a beautician because May's wouldn't do more than 4. And she wanted her friends at the appointment with her. Except she didn't do a bachelorette party with us, she did with her friends, or rehearsal dinner. So May didn't see any of us until the start of the wedding. She was livid. Apparently, she thought we would have stopped working out because of the Rona, even though we did it at home. Or that we would have stopped when she announced her engagement, so we didn't upstage her. She was mad because I didn't try to hide my scar and didn't tan, thought it would be implied. She made several snide remarks before throwing a drunk temper tantrum at the reception, basically accusing the 3 of us. But me ESP of trying to upstage her. I don't have that excuse //see I was a DD so sober, but I, quite famously, have a low tolerance for angry or crying drunks. I told her, if you're so insecure, you should have got off your ass instead of expecting us to lay on ours to make yours look better. It only got worse. Our family is on my side //see I didn't start it or do anything. But his family and her friends are giving me shit.